Hi everybody, in this short video I'm going to show you how you can sample from a uniform distribution in Excel, because there's no built-in function which allows you to do this directly. Sampling from a uniform distribution can be useful, for example, when you're trying to do a Monte Carlo simulation to assess the uncertainty in a decision-making process. So let's jump right into the file. Here in the upper right you see how a uniform distribution looks like. We see that it has a flat shape, so the defining feature is that every outcome has the same probability of occurring. An example would be a fair dice, where every number from 1 to 6 would be equally likely. The formula to sample from a uniform distribution is relatively simple, and I've shown it here. So we basically start out with the minimum and then add on the difference between the max and the min multiplied by the rand function, which generates a random number between 0 and 1. So let's try this out. Let's say, for example, that we want to sample from a uniform distribution between 0 and 2. Then we would type in equal and start out with the minimum, which would be 0 in this case, plus the rand function, which I've already calculated here in this cell, times the difference between the max and the min, so 2 minus 0. Here we get a value of 0.34, and every time you press F9, all formulas in Excel are automatically recalculated. So let's try this out a few times. We see that the values change, stay within the bounds of 0 and 2 as expected. And the value here in this formula, which controls which value is kind of outputted in the range between the min and the max, is the rand function. So if the rand function were to return a value of 0, we would get the minimum value. If it were to return a value of 1, we would get the maximum value. So let's test this out and overwrite the value here in this cell with 0. We see that here we get a 0, and if we were to type in a 1, we would get the maximum value of 2 in this case. Basically here on the left hand side I've done the same thing, but just 10,000 times. So 10,000 samples from a uniform distribution between 0 and 2. And then I've plotted the results here in the bar chart in the bottom right. And we see that the kind of shape of the bar chart is pretty even. It's not perfectly even because we have some random error from the sampling. And every time we would press F9, the values would be recalculated and the shape of the distribution would change slightly. If I were to change the value here, for example, from 2 to 3, the bounds of the distribution would change, but it would still be a uniform distribution between 0 and 3 in this case. So I hope you found this video useful, and thanks for watching.